So that should work there. So just for the purposes of today, what am I making you? I'm going to make you, I guess you could call it potato soup, or you could call it a vegetable soup. I am using a mirepoix today, okay? Who remembers what a mirepoix is, hopefully? Shayla? And the ratios? That is correct. Okay, so I would say that I used probably 4 small onions, about 3 to 4 stalks or ribs of celery, depending on how you look at that, and probably 4 or 5 small to medium-sized carrots. Okay. Sorry, I'm just updating my attendance. I have, by volume, I would say, this little Cambro container here. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and do 2 things at once here. I probably have, 4 to 5 cups of, I would say, medium diced potatoes. Okay, so couple ways that I can make a soup. By no means, by the way, is this the only way to make a soup. Jacques Pepin's method is he takes a saucepan, fills it with water, puts it on the stove to boil, and again, while he's waiting for it to boil, then he goes into the fridge. What I'm going to show you today is I have, in the effort of time, I have prepared a mirepoix, which is, as you can see here, this is what I just told you. So I separated it. Normally, when you make a soup, especially in French cuisine, I would say 95% of the time they're using a mirepoix. You can swap out, okay, the onion for other types of onion in the family. If you like leek, for example, or spring onion, or Vidalia, or yellow onion, it's really entirely up to you. But I really enjoy the flavor. Celery is a very mild type of produce, but it makes a nice base flavor. And I'm going to do it a little bit different today than Jacques Pepin does. I'm going to take a large sauce pot like this. Okay, there's a couple things I can do. I'm going to put fat in here today. The fat that I'm going to use today is going to be bacon fat because I just enjoy the flavor. However, I could, use butter. I can use a mix of olive oil, or I can use other types of fat like margarine or even canola oil or vegetable oil. But I happen to like the flavor that bacon fat imparts. It just gives a little more body to the soup. So I'm just going to come over to the stove. Okay. I'm going to put my pan on, and I'm going to turn the flame all the way up, and then I'm going to lower it to about a medium heat. Just going to let that get hot for a second. Couple things you should know about different types of fats is that the different types of fats have different smoke points. What is a smoke point for a fat? It is when it starts to burn. So something like butter, which is one of my favorite fats, has a very low smoke point. So it's not going to allow me to get it to a very, very high temperature. Whereas something like avocado oil has a very high smoke point, even seaweed oil. These things can get up to like 400 or 500 degrees before they even start to burn. So obviously we never would fill a deep fryer with fat. I have to make sure that whatever kind of fat I put in my deep fryer, that it can withstand the temperature. Okay, so this deep fryer, by the way, on a related note, is filled with canola oil. So I'm just putting, I'm gonna say 2 I don't know if you can see this, but 2 teaspoons, 2 to 3 teaspoons, so around a tablespoon of bacon fat in this sauce pot here. It's instantly starting to melt. I suppose I should stand this way so you can kind of see what's happening here. I am going to switch to a long wooden spoon, but all you can see is that it's just starting to melt in the beginning. The reason that I like to put fat in a pan first as opposed to doing what Jacques Pepin mentioned is because I find that it builds a whole other level of flavor, okay? What I'm doing right now by doing this is building what's called a fond, or it's going to be a fond. What is a fond, if you don't remember from the video? They are the naturalized sugars that end up getting stuck to the bottom of the pan. So by me sauteing or sweating these vegetables down first, I'm going to sort of bring out the sugar. Carrots have a lot of natural sugar on their own. And when you caramelize onions, they become sweeter as opposed to just boiling them in water. It's going to be a totally drastically different flavor. Okay, so now that my bacon fat has melted, you can see this here, what I'm listening for is the sound of like a sizzle. So just to test that I have the right temperature, I'm just going to take a couple of these veggies here, and I'm going to put them here, and you can hear that sound. That is a sound that I want to hear now. So I'm just going to take my entire mirepoix together, and I'm going to put it right inside the bottom of this sauce pot here. So now that I got this in here, just gonna give that a little shake. I don't know if you guys can see that. What I have here now is just these things doing their job. Remember, my ratio is a mirepoix, so it's slightly more onion than everything else. Just gonna wheel this card over as my table. It's always a good idea to have a table next to you to work from. Here's one of the things I want you to note. Before I put any kind of salt in here, I want to let these crisp up a little bit. As soon as I add sodium to my pan, what's going to happen is it's going to draw moisture out of the vegetables, and that water is going to jeopardize or hinder a little bit of the caramelization. So I'm going to wait to put sodium in my vegetables. I'm going to let this go for probably 3 or 4 minutes to bring a little bit of color to the mirepoix vegetables that I have here. While I'm waiting for that to get some color, I'm going to go into my spice cabinet. Okay, I'm going to keep it pretty simple today. Most of the soups, by the way, I want you to pay attention because tomorrow we're going to start a potato soup challenge where you guys are going to set a table and make a soup within an hour. Like you'll partner up and you'll probably go against, you know, one pair of students, or I'll divide the group so that half of the group competes against the other group. You're going to have to use a mirepoix and you're going to have to use potatoes. But having said that, you can do whatever you want with the soup. So you can boil water and soften vegetables that way, or you can take a similar approach and take a sauce pot and put fat in a pan. If you don't like bacon fat, you can certainly use olive oil or vegetable oil or butter or a mix of them. You can make the soup a clear soup, which you know is something like chicken noodle soup, or it's basically a clear broth with vegetables or protein suspended, or you can make a thick soup. When we use the term cream soup, it does not necessarily mean that it has milk or heavy milk fat or cream in it. It means that it has been pureed once the vegetables have been softened in it. Okay, so I can decide later what I want to do with the soup, but you're going to have a lot of free reign to go into the spice cabinet. If you wanted to add extra garlic, or you want to add a bay leaf, or you want it a little bit more spicy, you want to add some curry, you want to add a teaspoon of tomato, it's entirely up to you, okay? So this is cooking up here nice. Just going to give it a little shake once in a while. You probably really can't see, but some of the vegetables are starting to get a little bit of color. It's always a nice idea to use an oversized pan, by the way. Even if I'm not making a lot of soup, I want to have lots of room to be able to stir. Oftentimes you like to fill up the pot and have room for something to boil. So you always make sure that you want to get the biggest pot to allow yourself some room. So when it does come to a boil, you have room to add stuff, okay, to your pot. So getting back to the spices, I'm just going to put on the card here. I got a couple of chili flakes. These are bouillon cubes. I'll explain which ones I'm going to use in a minute. Those are those colorful cubes there. I have garlic powder, obviously salt and pepper. In everything that you cook, it is always salt and pepper. I'm going to take out some dry bay leaves here as well. And I think that's it for now, believe it or not. So now that I see, I'm just gonna stir this for a sec. The vegetables are starting to get translucent. They're getting a little bit of color. And I can tell you right now, without doing anything else, I don't know if you can smell it from over there, but just that tablespoon of bacon fat with this mirepoix vegetables, this thing already smells fantastic. I'm not blowing my own horn here. I'm telling you that this would be drastically different if I just put water and started to boil these vegetables. It would not smell like this, and you are not going to get the same amount of flavor that versus, you know, sauteing these vegetables like this. Because building the fond, as soon as I add cold liquid to my fond, that's known as deglazing the pan. And all of those caramelized sugars, the brown sort of stuff that you see on the bottom that's stuck to the pot, is now going to sort of come off and be released from the cold liquid. And it's going to add another layer of body to my flavor, or to my soup. Again, I haven't added anything. I didn't add any seasoning to this yet. I'm just going to put a little bit of black pepper. I would say when I season, I don't usually give, especially with salt and pepper, I usually say salt and pepper to taste. If you're not sure how to use the larger jugs, containers, it's always a really good idea to place it in your hand first, because you can always add more seasoning to a soup. The only way to really fix a soup if you over season it is to then add more water and to grow the volume, but then you run into other mistakes. You know, for this one, which I think I might puree, I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of how thick the soup is. I don't want it to be too watery. Like, to me, a creamed soup has a bit of thickness to it. It's not too thin. I don't want to order a soup, a cream of asparagus soup or a cream of potato soup from somewhere, but have it too runny. But I also don't want it too thick. Potatoes are notoriously starchy, and if I were to let this sit in the fridge, say for example, the next day, as it sets and the starch sort of, you know, settles, sometimes you can make it so thick where you can cut a slice of it, which you don't want. You don't want to be able to, you don't want to cut a slice of soup. You should be able to eat it with a spoon. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pepper to taste. I would say, I don't know, like third of a teaspoon or something, not even. So now that I have color, I don't know if you guys can see this, I'm getting a nice brown. I know it's on a slight delay there. I'm shaking the pan and moving it, but here you can see, I think it's up there, you'll see in a second. See this brown? It almost looks burnt, but it's not. I have this little bit of dark flavor now, and that is the beginning of my fond, okay? Again, nothing in here but bacon fat and a mirepoix. Now that I have that little bit of fond going, now I'm going to start adding some seasoning in layers. So salt is key. The reason, again, I waited for the salt is because I wanted to get color. As soon as I add the salt now, these are going to start to sweat, and it's going to start to expel the moisture because the salt's going to draw it out of the vegetables. So I would say about half a teaspoon of salt here just by taste. I'm going to put salt first. Again, always seasoning in layers. That is not enough salt for my entire pot of soup. However, by seasoning in layers, I'm building flavor, right? So now that I've added that, I'm going to let this mix a little bit. And obviously, I'm keeping an eye on the temperature all the time. I would say this is a medium to high heat. Now that I see that it's got a little bit of color on it here, I'm just going to lower it a hair, and I'm going to add the smallest amount of garlic. The reason that I'm waiting to add the garlic is because the garlic has been minced a lot smaller than my other vegetables. And when we add stuff into soup, it's really important to know what temperature things cook at. Because I don't want to burn the garlic, I'm adding it a little bit later. So I'm just going to put, I would say, about 1 teaspoon of minced garlic into my soup now. I like to put a mix of both real fresh garlic and powdered garlic because I think they impart different flavors. And even though I put real onion in here, I'm probably also going to add some onion powder later as well, just because the dehydrated onion has a different mouthfeel flavor, because the onions, the fact that I'm caramelizing them, come a bit sweeter. So I really love onion. Like, it's a big, big thing in cuisine. But I like the flavor that it imparts. I am going to now cheat, if you will, and I'm going to try to make bouillon or chicken stock out of bouillon cubes. There's bouillon cubes come in many different shapes and forms. These are the cubes, not to be confused with gold currency bouillon. This is B-O-U-I-L-L-O-N. The green is vegetable, the yellow is chicken, and the red is beef. I like chicken, so I'm going to take a chicken cube here. I'm going to open it up out of the foil. I'm going to throw it right inside my pan here. Okay, and now just going to let that melt down for a second. And just before I add my water, just to sweat out a little bit of the oil out of the leaves, I'm going to take some dry bay leaves and I'm going to put a couple of bay leaves in my pot before I add water. Whenever you add bay leaves, it's really important to note how many go in. Because I'm probably going to cream this soup later, puree with an immersion blender, if I left these bay leaves in there and I pureed it, would not be pleasant because these are dehydrated, they're dry, and there would be all these crumbled up bits inside the soup. So however many bay leaves go in, that's how many have to come out. So I'm putting in 3 small bay leaves right now into my soup, and I'm just gonna let those dance around for about a minute or so. And then believe it or not, I'm well on my way for this soup to be on the way to being tasting well. I'm gonna move it over, I'm gonna pick up the pot now and just literally bring it over to the sink and fill it with cold water, okay? So, this is what it looks like, by the way. Probably, doesn't look like much. You might even say, hey, Mr. Nano, that looks disgusting. That looks on the way to being burned. But you see the dark stuff that's stuck on the bottom there now? It's gonna all come off. You're gonna hear a sound. Watch this. Well, you kind of hear it. So the water's getting dirty. Watch, I'll show you in a sec here. As soon as I put cold water in here now, all of the stuff is coming off the bottom. So I can steal the spoon here and just sort of scrape down the side. As it comes back up to a boil, it will release on its own. Remember, what do I have in here so far? The mirepoix vegetables with some bacon fat, some salt and pepper, and 1 chicken bouillon cube. That's it. Again, I don't want to fill it up too much. I probably fill this sauce pot, I would say, about halfway. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. I don't want to fill it too much because I don't want to dilute my flavor. I'm going to need 2 hands because it's heavy now. But all it looks like now is basically, it's hot. It's basically dirty water. I need a glove. It's hot. Careful not to drop it. So I'm going to come back over to the stove now. And now I'm going to turn the heat all the way up. And in an effort to expedite the process, I'm going to throw a lid on it. What is a lid going to do? It is going to expedite the process and make it come to a boil quicker. All I need to do is make sure that the lid fits tightly. Okay? While I'm waiting for that to come up to a boil, I have potatoes that we cut yesterday. I just kept them under water. These were for some knife skills that I did with my other classes. The biggest thing is that you're trying to get consistent size pieces of potato so that it cooks the same. These are medium dice, right? There's some longer pieces, but because I am going to cook it and boil it for a while, I'm not too worried. Everything here, this is just the right amount of potatoes, I think, that's going to allow me to dump them. I'm going to use them all. It's going to allow me to, once I soften them and I puree them, I'm going to have the right consistency. You always might consider not putting as much water in the pot. Remember, you can always add water. Once you have too much water and you don't have enough, contents to make it a cream soup, it becomes too watery. So it's really important. I might also want to be mindful not to put too much liquid because I might want to finish the soup with, say, if I wanted to add cream, I would have to be mindful of how much volume that's going to add. If I wanted to add milk or another can, I could also mix and match different types of bouillons. If I had a carton jug of, say, a chicken broth or a carton of beef broth, I can mix flavors. I don't necessarily, and if you, of course, if you didn't like chicken, you wanted to make the whole thing vegetable and you can't have meat, you can forego the bacon fat. You can just use olive oil if you're a little bit more health conscious. Again, you can use just the vegetable bouillon, or you can use beef. I could have used a beef bone to start in there as a different method as well. So I'm just going to take this strainer, which is over here, I think, and drain my potatoes in the sink over here so they're ready to go. So here's the concept. While I'm waiting for this to boil, it gives me a couple of seconds to prepare some other stuff. I need to make sure that the soup comes back up to a boil before I add in my potatoes. And the reason that you want to make soup in stages is to make sure that things are being cooked properly at this point, because as soon as I added the cold water, obviously it lowered the temperature of the heat. So now I need to wait for it to come back up to temperature again. I would say, yeah. And then if you didn't get the potato measurement here, I have about, what did I say? Four cups, 4 to 5 cups, I would say, maybe 4 cups of medium diced potatoes here. So just going to make sure that I use a glove to take off the lid of this because it's going to be hot. You can see, I'll show you here in a sec what it looks like. It doesn't look like much. It actually kind of looks like a bit of a dirty top. A lot of the little impurities you see there also come, the deeper color also comes from the bouillon cube. But the reason that the broth is dark is because I built that level of fond, right? So if I was to just put boiling water, the soup would be almost clear, like completely clear, like the color of water, and the vegetables would not discolor the liquid at all. It is the fond, and it is that color that is giving you all of that flavor, okay? So I'm just gonna put the lid back on and let that come to a boil. Another thing, in the interest of time, can't see what time it is, it's 20 after. I gave you 2 Ed puzzles today. I think all of them are less than 10 minutes, both of them. They have to do with table setting. To save some time so you don't have to have any homework while I'm waiting for this to boil, you can get a head start on those for a minute, just to not waste time. And then probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes, this should come to a boil, and I'll grab your attention. And I'm gonna put the lid back on so it comes back up to a boil. As soon as it comes to a boil, again, I'm gonna lower it to a simmer. I was talking to Mr. Spina, and would I be able to So it's boiling again. Now I'm going to lower it to a simmer. And I'm going to take the lid off to reduce some of the liquid to concentrate the flavor, okay? Ideally, you never really want, again, a soup to be a rolling boil. You never really should roll boil anything except for like maybe pasta. Again, if I was making a consomme or I was making a stock of chicken bones or beef bones in the bottom and I have a rolling boil, that rolling boil is going to disrupt what's known as a raft, and all those impurities that are in, say, chicken bones or beef bones, they oftentimes tend to float to the top. So it's why you want to control the simmer and not have a rolling boil so that the broth or stock stays clean. It's not a total deal breaker. I mean, if you have a cloudy broth, it's still going to taste delicious, but you should know that a proper consomme in the French cuisine is clean and is like transparent. Okay, so that's really important. So I just have a small little simmer here. Of course, there's other things that I could have added to this soup if I wanted to. For example, my wife really likes tomato, so oftentimes I put like tomato paste inside just to give it a little bit more color and body. But for this one, it's just, again, it's 4 basic ingredients. It's a mirepoix plus water and a little bit of bouillon. Okay, that little bit of garlic is up to you for flavor, for choice. I can drop in a couple. I took out chili flakes. I didn't put any chili flakes in there, but I could add a couple, not necessarily to make it hot, but just to give it a little bit more body. And I also have here this can of beef base, which is from Costco, or you can get it at a lot of different stores, but it is bouillon in spreadable form, or in, I guess, in jar form. And I probably, first what I'm gonna do now is get a clean spoon. I'm just gonna taste where I am right now before I add any more salt to it, because I don't wanna make it unnecessarily salty. But I think that I love to mix the different types of bouillon because it gives different body to the soup. But before I make it too salty, I need to taste it. At this point, all I'm really waiting for are the vegetables to be soft. There is a small chance we can eat this in the next 20 minutes here, which I would like for you ideally to do. The soup would only get better, though, over the next day or two. So it's not bad. It's a little bland right now, believe it or not, even though I added the one bouillon cube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some other chicken bouillon in powder form with a clean spoon. I'm going to put a couple teaspoons of this type of chicken bouillon, which is a different. You also know that when you buy bouillon, depending on who makes it, if it's Knorr or this is Better Than Bouillon brand, or if it is Campbell's, they all sort of have different flavors. So I like to mix them because I think it gives a different flavor. So I'm going to say I'll put probably a tablespoon or two teaspoons of that powdered bouillon and 1 tablespoon of this beef bouillon, which is brand new, which I'm going to add to this. Which is really going to darken the broth because it is a very dark beef base. I think I might just grate the smallest amount of Parmesan cheese just to give a little more richness to the soup. Yeah, we're gonna eat this before we go. I think you'll enjoy it. It would be better, but it's gonna be ready. Just gonna let it go for another. Their vegetables are almost fully soft, so I'm just waiting. Again, before I puree this, I put in 3 bay leaves, so out 3 bay leaves will come. Okay. It's a good question. So I put, well, this is here. It's, I would say, what is that? About a cup, maybe 1 cup. 1 cup of I didn't put it in yet though. I don't want to. I'm gonna puree it, then put it in. But about 1 cup. So now you have all the ingredients. And I guess because I half filled this with water, I would say there's probably 3 liters of soup here. Ballpark, maybe 4, 3 to 4 liters of soup. And then another thing, which is really important, is cleaning up as you go when you're in the kitchen. So I'm just putting the cheese away. I put my spices away while I was waiting. Wrapping up the Parmesan cheese here again. Yep. Of course. I don't, yeah. You have to do it all on a time constraint. So, yeah. But again, when you're making the soup though, like you're making only like a couple of cups of soup. So you're going to get like 1 rib of celery, 1 small onion, half a piece of carrot, and then maybe 1 small potato, because by the time you add everything together, it grows in volume. And so the goal is that it's a challenge. So we taste, let's say it's you and Mark versus like Yusuf and Milan or whatever. Like you just meant to taste it, right? We don't want to waste food. And some of the soups don't turn out. The best advice is the KISS method. You ever heard that? Keep it super simple. When you oftentimes just keep things with a couple few ingredients, it turns out really well. Some of the best cuisines in the world are just simple ingredients but fresh. You're welcome to go into the spice cabinet, but when you start getting too carried away and you start adding like every single spice that's in there, then it starts to get away from you and you kind of forget. So it's always a good idea to have a plan, right? Even though they're only the same ingredients, 4 ingredients, they can turn out a million different ways, okay? This is probably almost ready. I just want to see how soft these vegetables are. I can tell how soft they are when I even turn it, because I can feel against the wooden spoon how hard they are. But I think they're well on their way here. And not only that, but I cut the mirepoix small on purpose so that it would cook quicker. It's going to get a clean spoon and taste the broth again, because I'm really close to being done now. I'm just, again, waiting for these things to get soft. Oh, wow, is it ever good? Now it's really good. Has a nice deep flavor to it. If you've never used an immersion blender before, they're awesome. You just have to make sure that you don't lift it up. So an immersion blender is really nice because I can basically puree something without having to transport it or decant it into a blender. This is my blender on a stick. This one is lucky. The actual bottom comes off, so I'm going to put the top on. Obviously, I'm going to undo the cord. I'm going to plug it in. Then I'm going to bring the soup over here. You know what? Maybe I'll bring it over there so you can see on the camera how I puree it. That's what I'll do. It's a bit working on getting more cameras here, so I'm just going to put this down, obviously, because it's going to be hot. I'm going to get a slotted spoon to fish out the bay leaves. There's one, oh, there it is. Found it. Okay. So I'm going to bring this over. So you can kind of see here what it looks like. Let's let this sit there for 1 sec. I'm going to get my immersion blender plugged in. One big thing to remember when you're using an immersion blender is to always make sure that it stays immersed. As soon as you bring the lip of this up over the liquid, you're going to wear it, and it's like molten lava with this thing. Especially when the soup gets thick, and sometimes you're not keeping an eye on it, it bubbles over, and it's like hot porridge or lava on your arm. It hurts so much. So, in 3 bay leaves went, so in 3 bay leaves came out, or out the bay leaves came. Again, I think the butter is phenomenal. Hopefully nobody's counting calories. I'm going to put just a couple tablespoons of butter in here, just by eye. That's it. I'm going to let it melt. I like to puree with the fat because I think that it makes it really velvety. So again, I'm just going to, this has a safety feature on it. I'm just going to start to puree this. Not even, I don't have to move it or anything. And again, it's darker because, excuse me, I did the fond and I added beef base. If I was to use a vegetable or something, it would come a lot more lighter. But you're going to see just how tasty this is by the fact that we sweated these vegetables first. I don't have to fully puree it, by the way. It's a total choice. You don't have to puree it at all. I mean, the soup would be delicious as it is, having the vegetables suspended in the broth, but I think that this creamy soup's a bit nice. It's a little bit not as thick as I want, but that's okay. I could put this back on the stove, obviously, later, and puree it more, or reduce it more, excuse me. Sorry? I didn't hear you. 10 minutes? Okay, so this is going to be ready. So I'm just going to dump in the cheese now and give it one more pass with the immersion blender, and then we'll enjoy it. cheese. If I wanted to add cream or something, again, I wouldn't have put as much liquid. I'm not going to put any milk or anything in this today because I have the cheese already, but you could, again, sky's the limit. Yep. I did not. I actually did not. I believe I said I was going to. I opted not to. I guess just the point is that you're certainly welcome to add whatever you want. Okay, so to speed this up, I'm going to pour this into a jug and then give you all cups. It's going to be hot, letting you know. I would say about a cup. Okay,